The rain didn't just fall that night. It attacked. Each drop hit the marble streets of the capital like shards of glass, cutting through the heavy air thick with smoke and the bitter stench of burning oil. The torches lining the slave district flickered in the storm, hissing as the wind tore at their flames. The sky above looked wounded, split open by flashes of silver lightning that exposed the filth and fear below. She ran, barefoot, bleeding, breath ragged. Her body was a map of survival written in scars and trembling muscle. Torn linen clung to her skin, soaked through, heavy with rain and blood. Behind her, the sound of boots pounded against stone, voices sharp and merciless. "Find the shifter!" someone bellowed. She ducked, heart slamming against her ribs, slipping into the narrow gap between two crumbling walls. Her hands pressed against the cold stone, fingers shaking. Every sound seemed louder now, the clatter of armor, the rasp of thunder, the echo of her own breath. She wanted to disappear, melt into the shadows, become air. But the scent of her fear would give her away. Wolves could smell terror like blood in the water. Her pulse synced with the storm, wild and uncontrollable. Her wolf, dormant but restless, scratched from within, whispering in the dark corners of her mind. "Let me out." The voice was low, feminine, dangerous. "Let me run." But she couldn't. Not here. Not in the heart of the capital, where shifters were chained and auctioned like animals. She'd seen what they did to her kind, displayed them in the market square, collars forged from silver, eyes hollowed out by obedience. A gust of wind carried the smell of iron. She looked down. Her wrists, raw and red, still bore the faint mark of shackles she'd broken hours ago. Freedom was supposed to taste sweet. Tonight, it burned like fire. She pressed her back to the wall and peered through the rain. The marketplace stretched before her, a graveyard of broken carts and abandoned stalls. Statues of Roman gods loomed above, their faces worn smooth by centuries but still watching, judging. She wondered if even stone could pity her. Her legs trembled, the world blurred at the edges. She hadn't eaten in days. The only thing keeping her upright was fear. Pure, feral, desperate fear. A shadow moved near the old auction platform. A guard, perhaps two. Their torches painted the puddles gold and red. She sank lower, chest tight, breath shallow. The pain in her back flared where the whip had torn skin. She pressed her palm to the wound, blood mixed with rain, slipping down her arm like liquid fire. The storm grew louder, like the gods themselves were angry. Lightning ripped across the sky, throwing her reflection against the stone wall. A ghost of herself, hair plastered to her face, eyes bright and wild. She barely recognized the girl staring back. That girl was supposed to be gone. The one who once laughed, who believed love was something pure. The one who thought her pack would protect her when the hunters came. But the pack had turned first. Their eyes filled with fear when her power surfaced, when the silver flame had erupted from her hands and consumed their enemies, and almost them too. They'd called her cursed, dangerous, unfit to live among them. The memory hit her like another blow, her mother's scream, the sound of ropes tightening, the cold decree of exile. She'd begged for mercy, but the elders had only whispered prayers to the moon. Then came silence, and the darkness swallowed her whole. A splash jolted her back. A guard had entered the alley. She could see the glint of his blade through the rain. Her throat closed. Her body wanted to shift, to run on four legs, to taste wind and freedom, but she bit it down, trembling violently. Shifting now would expose her light, that silver fire burning inside her. She crouched lower, praying the thunder would cover the sound of her breathing. Her heart hammered so hard it hurt. She thought of her mother again, how she'd once said, Fear doesn't make you weak, my love. It makes you careful. It makes you survive. Another flash of light. The guard turned his head, scanning the shadows. She pressed her hand against her mouth. The world felt too small, her lungs too tight, her skin too loud. Then, silence. No voices, no footsteps. Only the sound of rain softening against the marble. For one brief moment, she thought maybe, just maybe, she was safe. But then, from somewhere beyond the storm, came the steady rhythm of boots. Not hurried, not frantic, measured, commanding. Someone was coming. She couldn't see him yet, but she could feel him. The air changed. The guards who had been shouting seconds ago fell silent, as though the mere presence of this new arrival demanded it. The storm itself seemed to hush, pausing between breaths. A voice followed. Deep. Calm. Too calm. Stop. One word, and the entire street obeyed. She froze, staring through the sheets of rain. A figure stepped into view, cloaked, broad-shouldered, and unbothered by the storm. The torches reflected off his armor, black metal marked with the sigil of the royal pack. The serpent and the wolf intertwined. Her pulse faltered. That symbol only belonged to one man. The Alpha King's right hand. Lightning flared, illuminating his face for a heartbeat. Sharp jaw, eyes like the edge of night, and an expression that didn't belong to any mortal soldier. He scanned the street once, then his gaze found her. Her breath caught. He knew. She didn't know how, but he did. His stare was too certain, too direct. He didn't see a fugitive. He saw her. The girl who wasn't supposed to exist. "Release her," he said quietly. The guards hesitated, exchanging uncertain glances. "But my lord, she's—" I said release her. Even the thunder seemed to wait for his command. Chains clattered. The guards stepped back. She remained frozen, unsure if this was mercy or another trick. The man took a step closer, slow, deliberate. "The Alpha King must see you now." Her stomach twisted. The Alpha King. The ruler who executed shifters in the Colosseum. The one whose word could unmake a life with a nod. She stumbled backward, shaking her head. No. The word never left her lips, but it echoed in her chest. He extended his hand, not gently, not cruelly, simply waiting. Rain streaked down his face, his cloak heavy with water. His eyes, though, they didn't look like those of a hunter. There was something else there, something that felt like recognition. The storm broke around them, wind shrieking through the narrow streets. Her wolf stirred again, restless, pacing beneath her skin. The energy between them crackled. Fear, distrust, something dangerously close to attraction. She didn't know if she was walking toward her salvation or her doom. But she took his hand, and in that instant, lightning struck the spire above, splitting the sky in two. He didn't flinch. He only looked at her as though the storm was nothing compared to what he saw in her eyes. The world blurred around them. The noise of the guards faded. The scent of smoke, the wet stone, the taste of iron. All of it folded into the background as he led her toward the palace gates. Her mind screamed to run. Her body followed him anyway. Every step felt like walking deeper into a story she didn't choose, a story that began long before she was born. As they passed under the carved archway leading into the royal grounds, she dared one glance back. The slave district was swallowed in rain and shadow. For a moment, she thought she saw her mother's face in the stormlight, watching, warning, weeping. Her chest tightened. Inside, the corridors glowed with torchlight, gold reflecting off the marble floors. Statues of kings past lined the hall, each one with eyes carved too real. The scent of cedar and old blood lingered in the air. The man walked ahead of her, silent, unyielding. She wanted to ask his name, but the question stuck in her throat. Maybe she already knew it. Maybe some part of her, buried deep and ancient, had always known. When they reached the final doors, towering and engraved with silver wolves, she stopped. Her voice came out small. "Why does he want me?" He didn't turn. "You'll understand soon." The doors opened with a groan that echoed through her bones. Beyond them, the throne room stretched like a cathedral, vast and cruelly beautiful. Candles burned along the walls, casting trembling light over the marble steps. And there, on a dais carved with the symbols of moon and claw, sat the Alpha King. He looked nothing like the monster she'd imagined. His face was too calm, his presence too heavy, the kind of power that didn't need to shout. The man beside her lowered his head. "My king, the girl has been found." The king's gaze fell upon her. The air shifted, her knees almost buckled under the weight of it. He studied her for a long moment, then, in a voice smooth as steel, said, "You ran far, little flame." She didn't answer. She couldn't. The torches flickered as if bowing to him. The storm outside raged harder. Her heart pounded in time with the thunder. And somewhere deep inside her, the silver flame stirred again, alive, restless, remembering what it once was. The king leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Bring her closer." The guards hesitated, glancing at one another. He smiled faintly. "She will not bite. Not yet." The man who found her took her arm gently, leading her up the steps. She wanted to resist, but something in the king's gaze rooted her to the spot. As she stood before him, drenched, trembling, and defiant, the Alpha King rose from his throne. His shadow fell across her like a promise and a threat. He spoke softly, almost to himself. So the prophecy was true. Her stomach dropped. He smiled. A slow, knowing smile. "Welcome home, daughter of fire." And in that moment, every scar on her body burned like the moon itself was watching. The storm outside answered with another crack of lightning, and the throne room filled with white light. Then, darkness. A voice, barely a whisper, cut through the silence. If this story grips you, subscribe to Sophie's Romance Collections, where hearts race and destinies awaken. The sound of the chains hitting the marble floor echoed like thunder in a cathedral. The moment stretched, suspended between breath and disbelief. The crowd that had gathered to witness her punishment shifted uneasily, eyes darting between the hooded stranger and the trembling girl before him. The storm outside roared in defiance, its fury spilling through the broken archways of the old courtyard. She didn't move. Couldn't. Her wrists stung where the shackles had bitten deep, but it wasn't the pain that held her still. It was him. The hooded man stood at the center of the chaos as though the world bent around his will. His cloak was soaked through. Clinging to armor engraved with the sigil of the royal pack, the serpent and the wolf entwined. A mark of power, of allegiance, of death. No one spoke. The guards, moments ago eager to drag her through the streets, now hesitated like children caught in a lie. The man's voice cut through the silence again, low and deliberate. "Release her." The nearest guard swallowed hard. "She's a danger, my lord." The king ordered. "I said release her." He didn't raise his tone, but something in it made even the thunder hesitate. The guard fumbled with the keys, metal clinking in nervous rhythm. When the chains came loose, she stumbled forward, catching herself with a sharp intake of breath. Her knees trembled, the world spinning, the rain biting against her skin. The man stepped closer, and the crowd instinctively parted. He moved like a storm given form, controlled, relentless. His hood shadowed his face, but she could feel the weight of his gaze. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't pity. It was recognition. Her heartbeat faltered. How could a stranger look at her like that? The chain slipped from her fingers. The world was too quiet. Every sound seemed to vanish except the rhythm of his steps approaching through the rain. When he stopped, he was close enough for her to feel the heat radiating from him. A faint scent clung to the air, cedar and smoke and something ancient, something that stirred the wolf beneath her skin. She didn't want to react, but her pulse betrayed her. Her body leaned forward before her mind could stop it. He reached up and lowered his hood. Lightning revealed him, the face of a man carved by battles and silence. Dark hair slicked back by the storm, eyes the color of burning amber. His expression was unreadable, but his presence filled the courtyard like fire in winter. He looked at her, really looked, and the world tilted. She felt stripped bare under that gaze. Every secret she'd buried, every scar she'd hidden, laid open before him. He spoke softly, almost like he was speaking to himself. "You survived." She blinked, her throat dry. "What?" His gaze sharpened. "You shouldn't have, not after what they did to you." Her stomach twisted. He knew. Somehow, he knew. The guards exchanged nervous glances. The one nearest dared a whisper. "My lord, she's dangerous. Her power hasn't been sealed." "She's coming with me," he said. "By order of who?" "The Alpha King." The words hit harder than the rain. The crowd gasped. No one questioned a royal decree, not even the soldiers who enforced it. The guards lowered their weapons, stepping back as though distance could spare them from the consequences. The man extended his hand toward her, palm open. "You can come willingly," he said, voice steady, "or you can fight me. But either way, the king will see you." Her mind raced. The Alpha King, the ruler who enslaved her kind, who built empires on their suffering. The thought of facing him sent ice through her veins. She stared at the hand. The rain trickled down his wrist, over the scars that crossed his skin. Not the marks of privilege, but of battle. She hesitated. "Why?" Her voice cracked, almost lost in the storm. "Why would he want me?" His eyes flickered, a storm within their own. "Because you're not what they say you are." Something in his tone made her chest ache. She didn't trust him. She didn't trust anyone. But his certainty unsettled her. Before she could answer, a shout broke from the edge of the courtyard. Another group of guards rushed in, those who hadn't yet realized the command had changed. "There she is! The cursed one!" The crowd scattered in panic. Torches fell, flames hissing as they met the rain. The man turned toward the noise, his expression unreadable, but his stance shifted, shoulders squared, one hand sliding to the hilt at his side. "Stay behind me," he said. She wanted to protest. She wanted to run, but her body obeyed him before her mind decided. The guards advanced, spears glinting beneath the lightning. The hooded man didn't draw his weapon. Instead, he raised a hand. And for a heartbeat, the storm seemed to bow. Wind coiled around him, swirling, bending, obeying. Then, silence. Every guard froze mid-step, eyes wide, as though invisible claws held them still. He looked at her over his shoulder, his voice calm but heavy with warning. "If you shift now, they'll never stop hunting you. Do you understand?" Her breath caught. He knew. He could feel the wolf in her the same way she felt it clawing beneath her ribs, begging to break free. She nodded once, trembling. He released the air with a flick of his hand, and the soldiers dropped to their knees, gasping, weapons scattering across the marble. The man turned back to her, his face unreadable. "Let's go before they remember how to breathe." She stared at him, stunned. "Who are you?" He hesitated, the faintest curve of a smirk touching his lips. Someone who's already risked too much for you. Then he turned, walking toward the gate, expecting her to follow. For a long moment, she stood in the rain, watching him move through the chaos he'd effortlessly silenced. She didn't know why she followed. Maybe it was the promise of answers. Maybe it was exhaustion. Or maybe it was that, for the first time in years, someone hadn't looked at her like a monster. The path to the palace was long, winding through the ruins of the old Roman market. Statues of emperors and gods loomed above, their cold eyes watching. The rain softened, replaced by the faint hum of the city at night. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolled, the sound of curfew. He walked ahead, silent but aware. Every so often he'd glance back, making sure she was still there. Finally, she found her voice. "You knew my name." "Yes." "How?" "Because the king told me to find you." Her chest tightened. "He knows who I am?" He slowed, meeting her gaze. "He knows what you are." Her breath hitched. The memory of the fire, the silver light that had burst from her hands, flashed behind her eyes. She'd tried to forget that night, tried to believe it was a nightmare. But nightmares didn't leave scars like this. They reached a bridge overlooking the lower city. From here, the view stretched endlessly. Marble rooftops, distant fires, the gleam of the royal spire cutting through the clouds. She stopped. "If I go with you, will he kill me?" He didn't answer immediately. The silence spoke louder than words. "Then why should I trust you?" His expression softened, but his eyes stayed guarded. "Because you already know what happens if you don't." She swallowed hard. Lightning flared, throwing his features into sharp relief. Strong jaw, faint lines of weariness at the corners of his eyes, the kind of face that had seen too much and carried it all in silence. He turned away, his cloak swirling behind him. "You have power you don't understand. If the wrong hands get to you first, this entire kingdom burns." The words struck like a spark in dry grass. "So I'm a weapon?" "No." His voice was firm now. "You're the fire before the dawn." Her chest ached with something she couldn't name. Hope? Fear? Both. They crossed into the upper quarter, where the streets gleamed clean, untouched by the filth below. The scent changed. Incense, oil, and the faint sweetness of blooming vines. Guards lined the palace walls, their armor polished, their faces impassive. No one stopped him. They didn't dare. Inside, the halls were vast and golden, lit by torches that burned blue. The sound of their footsteps echoed through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Every flicker of flame cast moving shadows that danced along the marble columns. She could feel eyes on her, the weight of centuries of power embedded in every stone. Her wolf shifted uneasily beneath her skin, sensing danger she couldn't see. Finally, the man spoke again. "When you stand before the king, do not speak unless he asks you to. Do not lie. And above all, do not show him your flame." Her pulse quickened. "He already knows I have it." He looked at her then, and for the first time, she saw something like fear in his eyes. Knowing is different from seeing. They stopped before the massive iron doors of the throne room. 2 guards bowed and swung them open. The sound reverberated through her bones. The man leaned closer, voice low. "Whatever happens, remember this. Fate brought you here for a reason." Before she could reply, he stepped aside, gesturing her forward. The air inside was heavy with incense and dominance. The king sat upon his throne, unmoving, a figure carved from shadow and light. Around him, the council watched in silence, eyes sharp as knives. The man behind her bowed. "My king, the girl you requested." The king didn't move. "Remove her hood." She hadn't realized she still wore it. When it fell back, the room seemed to inhale. Gasps rippled through the council as if her face carried the mark of something divine. Or cursed. The king's gaze locked on hers. "You bear her eyes," he murmured. "The same as your mother." The floor seemed to tilt beneath her. "You knew her?" The king rose slowly. "I sentenced her." A single tear cut through the dirt on her cheek. The man who brought her tensed, his hand brushing the hilt of his blade. The king noticed and smiled faintly. "You've grown attached already?" "She's under my protection." "Protection?" The king's tone was amused. "Or redemption?" The air between them sparked with old tension, unspoken history. She stood between two powers that could tear the world apart, her heart racing, her body trembling, not from fear alone, but from the weight of something she didn't yet understand. Then, quietly, almost gently, the king said, "Bring her closer." The envoy hesitated, but obeyed. As they approached, she could feel the pull again, like gravity, like destiny. The king's eyes glowed faintly, and she realized the truth that made her knees weaken. He wasn't just looking at her, he was reading her memories, her pain, her flame, and somewhere deep inside her the wolf whispered one single word. "Run." The iron wheels groaned as the prison cart rattled over cobblestones, slick with rain. Every jolt bit into her spine, scraping against the fresh wounds carved by the guards' whips. The storm hadn't eased. It only shifted shape, like it was alive, like it could feel her pain and wanted to echo it back. Lightning ripped open the night sky, and for a fleeting second, her reflection glimmered in the metal bars. Eyes too bright, too unnatural. The eyes of something not entirely human. She turned away. The sight of herself always hurt more than the wounds. Because every time she looked into those strange silver eyes, she saw everything she had lost. Her home, her name, her mother's voice whispering her lullabies under moonlight. The rain mixed with tears she refused to admit were falling. She could still hear the night of her banishment like it was happening again. The moon had been full, bloated with power, pregnant with expectation. The lunar games were meant to celebrate strength, unity, the pride of their kind. But when her bones began to twist mid-ceremony, when her scream tore through the chants, when silver fire burst from her palms and scorched the sacred stones, everything changed. The elders called it abomination. The Alpha called it treason. And her mother fell to her knees, begging them to spare her only child. The memory sliced deeper than any blade. She remembered how her mother's voice trembled as she offered her own life in exchange for her daughter's. The pack accepted. That was the night the torches burned higher than the stars. That was the night she lost everything but breath. Now, shackled in the cart, that breath came ragged. Each inhale scraping against guilt. Each exhale laced with shame. She wanted to hate them. She wanted to hate the pack, the elders, even her mother for choosing sacrifice over escape. But she couldn't. Because deep inside, she knew they feared what she didn't understand herself. That power. The silver flame. It had lived beneath her skin since birth. An ember too bright to hide, too dangerous to touch. When she was small, it saved her once. She'd been cornered by rogues near the borderlands. Their eyes yellow with hunger, teeth glinting in the dark. She'd screamed for help, but no one came. Then the air itself had cracked open. Her hands burned white. The rogues fell, howling, convulsing, as the earth beneath them glowed like molten silver. She was only 7. From that day, whispers followed her. Demon child, moon's mistake, cursed blood. And yet, as she sat chained in that cart, she realized something bitter. The fear in their eyes was the same fear now flickering in hers. The envoy rode ahead, his cloak soaked through, his hair clinging to the line of his jaw. He hadn't spoken since ordering her release. She had studied him through the rain, through the veil of her own exhaustion. He didn't carry himself like a servant. His posture, the way others avoided his gaze, the way he moved, controlled, deliberate, spoke of a man used to command. But it was his silence that unnerved her most. Silence could mean pity, or it could mean calculation. When the cart hit a rut, she flinched, and his eyes caught hers. Just for a heartbeat. But in that heartbeat, something happened. The silver flame inside her stirred, recognizing him, or maybe warning her. He didn't look away. There was no disgust in his stare, no mockery. Only something heavy. Something that felt like memory. She looked down, pretending to focus on the iron chains binding her wrists. The metal was cold, biting into her skin. Yet she could feel warmth underneath, like the flame was restless, trying to remind her it was still there, waiting. Why now? Why couldn't it have stayed buried like she wanted? Her heartbeat thudded unevenly. Every sound, the creak of wood, the hiss of rain, seemed to merge with the pulse in her head. She hated the feeling of being watched, yet a part of her clung to the weight of his attention. It made her feel seen. For years, she'd lived like a ghost, hiding from bounty hunters, feeding on scraps, sleeping under ruins. She'd learned to stop hoping anyone would come for her. That kind of hope was poison. But now, with this stranger claiming the Alpha King wanted to see her, that poison was trickling back through her veins. Why would the king, of all beings, want anything to do with her? The question gnawed at her, louder than the storm. When the cart slowed before the fortress gates, she dared to look out. The capital loomed like a beast carved from black stone, towers piercing the clouds, runes glowing faintly across the walls. The scent of wet earth mingled with the musk of wolves. Guards bowed as the envoy dismounted, his boots sinking into the mud with a dull thud. He gave no orders, no glance, just a gesture. The chains were undone, and for a moment, she almost forgot to move. Her legs trembled when she stepped down. The ground felt too real, too solid. The envoy's voice broke through the rain, low and measured. "You'll walk beside me. Do not speak unless spoken to." There was no cruelty in his tone, but no warmth either. Still, she found herself obeying. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the strange pull that seemed to anchor her to him. As they crossed beneath the towering archway, she caught sight of carvings etched deep into the walls. Wolves, moons, flames, symbols of old. Her breath caught when she saw one that looked disturbingly familiar, a woman with silver fire blooming from her hands. Her stomach twisted. The envoy noticed her pause. "You've seen it before." It wasn't a question, she swallowed. "In my dreams," she murmured before she could stop herself. He turned his head, eyes sharp. Dreams can be echoes of truth. Something in his tone made her skin prickle. Echoes of truth. They moved through corridors heavy with history. The walls whispered of bloodlines and betrayal, of kings who had risen and fallen beneath the same moon. She could feel it all, like the memories of this place were pressing against her heart, testing if she belonged. The silence stretched between them until it became unbearable. Finally, she whispered, "Who are you?" His reply came soft but certain. "Cassian. Royal Guard to the Alpha King." She almost laughed at the absurdity. "Royal Guard? You stopped an execution with one word." He didn't smile. "The King's word." Her throat tightened. "Then why me?" He stopped walking. The echo of their steps faded. Rain dripped from the archways, each drop loud in the stillness. When he finally spoke, his words were quiet enough to make her lean closer. because you are not what they told you you are. The air thickened. She wanted to demand what that meant, but his gaze pinned her in place, sharp, unyielding, almost mournful. Like he knew her better than she knew herself. They resumed walking. The air grew warmer as torches lined the final hallway, flickering gold across her damp skin. Each step toward the throne chamber made her heart beat heavier. The walls vibrated faintly. She could feel the hum of ancient power, the kind that came from oaths sealed with blood. Cassian slowed his pace, glancing at her wrists. Does it still burn? She blinked. What? The mark, he said softly, nodding toward the faint silver scar wrapping around her right wrist. I thought it would have faded. She instinctively covered it with her hand. It doesn't fade. It grows stronger every time the moon rises. He nodded, almost to himself. Then it's true. The prophecy wasn't just words carved into stone. Her voice shook. What prophecy? He hesitated, studying her like he was weighing how much truth she could bear. The flame that defies death, he said finally. The bloodline that will end kings, or crown one anew. Her heart stopped. You think that's me? I don't think, he replied. I know. Her laugh came bitter, hollow. You've got the wrong girl. I'm barely holding myself together. My pack hates me. My mother is dead. I have nothing. He stepped closer, his voice a low murmur. You have everything. You just haven't remembered it yet. The words hit something deep, raw, and trembling inside her. She wanted to deny them, to shove them back into the dark where belief couldn't hurt her. But the way he said it didn't sound like faith. It sounded like memory. And for the first time in years, she wondered, had someone else seen her flame before? As they neared the great doors, thunder rolled overhead, shaking the ceiling. Cassian glanced upward, eyes narrowing. He knows you're here. Who? She whispered, even though she already knew. The Alpha King. The torches dimmed, like even fire itself bowed in respect to that name. She swallowed hard. The air buzzed with something ancient and electric, and deep beneath her ribs, the silver flame flickered again, faint but alive. And for the first time, she didn't fight it, because no matter what waited beyond those doors, truth or death, something in her soul whispered that this was the moment everything had been leading to. Her heart didn't beat faster. It roared. And as the doors creaked open, spilling gold light into the hall, she realized the one thing she had never dared to hope for was about to find her. The doors swung wide with a low, thunderous groan that rolled through the grand hall like a warning. The air shifted, thick, heavy, charged with a kind of reverence that pressed against the lungs. The scent of burning myrrh and rain-soaked stone clung to the air. Before her stretched the royal citadel's heart, built upon the bones of an empire that had long turned to dust. Ancient Roman pillars lined the hall, cracked but unbroken, their marble veins glistening in torchlight. The walls were alive with murals, wolves draped in gold crowns, their fangs bared against shadowed creatures whose forms seemed to twist and writhe even in stillness. She could feel their eyes on her. The painted wolves, the guards, the priests in their white robes trimmed with crimson thread, all of them waiting for something, for her to move, to breathe, to prove she was either a threat or a myth. Cassian's presence lingered beside her like a shadow with heartbeat. He didn't speak, but she felt the way his energy rippled, alert, protective, uncertain. The clank of his armor against his thigh filled the silence between them, grounding her even as her heart clawed at her ribs. At the far end of the hall, beneath a canopy of black silk embroidered with the crest of the royal pack, a silver wolf circled by flame, stood a raised dais. Upon it rested a throne carved from obsidian. Behind it, a mosaic spread across the floor like a map of time itself, its centerpiece a lunar emblem ringed by ancient runes. Her gaze caught on the faint shimmer of light that seemed to breathe from the mosaic. And then she realized, no, it wasn't light. It was calling. A low hum resonated in her chest, a vibration that wasn't entirely sound. The same hum she had felt the night she lost everything. Her fingers twitched against the pull of it, and she took an involuntary step forward. The high priest, draped in layers of ivory linen that whispered as he moved, stepped from the shadows. His eyes, milky and ancient, lifted toward her face as though searching for something buried beneath her skin. When he spoke, his voice rasped like parchment torn by age. The marked one who bears the fire of Luna. He paused, his throat working as if the words themselves were sacred poison. The prophecy breathes again. A gasp rippled through the hall. One of the guards muttered a prayer under his breath, clutching the pendant around his neck. Her pulse spiked. "No," she whispered, though her voice barely carried. "You're mistaken." But even as denial escaped her lips, the mark on her wrist began to burn. It wasn't the dull ache she'd grown used to. It was alive. The silver scarf flared into brilliance, light spilling across her palm like liquid moonlight. The glow crawled up her forearm, tracing veins with luminous fire. The crowd drew back, murmuring in awe and fear. Cassian's hand went instinctively to the hilt of his blade, not as a threat, but as if anchoring himself to something solid amid what he could not explain. She staggered, clutching her arm, breathing through gritted teeth. "Make it stop," she gasped. "Please, make it stop." The high priest took a trembling step forward. "It cannot be stopped," he said softly. "Not while the moon still reigns. You stand where it first began." His hand lifted, motioning toward the mosaic. This was once the temple of Luna Primus, the first altar to the goddess who blessed our kind. Beneath this stone, an ancient pact was forged. Blood for flame. Flame for balance. Her vision blurred as the mark pulsed in rhythm with his words. The world tilted. Images flickered behind her eyelids, wolf shadows running through marble corridors, rivers of silver fire. A woman crowned with moonlight raising her hands toward the heavens. Her heart raced faster, trying to chase the vision away, but it only deepened, clearer with each beat. She saw the woman's face. Her own. She fell to her knees, gasping as the light spread from her wrist to her chest, illuminating the intricate veins like constellations beneath her skin. Cassian caught her before she hit the floor, his arms firm, his breath close enough for her to feel it against her temple. "What's happening to her?" he demanded, his voice slicing through the priest's silence. The priest's hands shook as he traced a sign in the air. The prophecy. The mark has awakened. She is the vessel reborn. "Stop calling me that!" she cried, twisting from Cassian's hold. Her voice cracked with desperation, eyes wild. "I don't want this. I never asked for any of this." Cassian looked at her like he was seeing both the girl and the storm at once. "Maybe it's not about what you want," he said quietly. "Maybe it's about what you are." She shook her head, tears streaking through the grime on her cheeks. "You don't understand. Every time it awakens, someone dies. I tried to contain it. I tried to kill it." The light pulsed violently in her palm, casting dancing reflections against the walls, illuminating the golden wolves and the shadow beasts locked in eternal battle. The fire in her hand flared brighter when it touched the painted shadows, and for a split second, they moved. Their painted eyes turned toward her. A collective shudder swept through the room. The priest fell to his knees, pressing his forehead to the floor. "Luna, forgive us," he whispered. "The fire returns." And then the voice came, Not from him, not from anyone in the room, but from somewhere deeper. It was soft, layered, ancient. A voice that seemed to echo from within her bones. Child of flame. The balance breaks. Awaken, or all shall fall. She froze. Her breath hitched. The sound wasn't entirely external. It resonated from inside her skull, like the goddess herself was whispering through blood. Cassian stepped closer, lowering his tone. What did you hear? She stared into nothing, trembling. A warning. He held her gaze. Or a command. Lightning cracked through the skylight above, flooding the hall in white brilliance. For a heartbeat, everything stilled, the guards frozen mid-breath. The torches bowing to the light. Even the rain seemed to hush outside. And then, as the thunder rolled away, she rose slowly to her feet. The silver glow dimmed, but didn't fade. It lingered beneath her skin like embers waiting for air. The high priest dared to lift his gaze, his voice barely above a whisper. You bear the mark of Luna Primus, the same flame that birthed the first wolves. You cannot deny it. You cannot run from it. Her chest tightened. You think this is destiny. It feels like a curse. The priest shook his head. Every gift is a curse to those who do not yet understand it. She looked away, anger and fear warring inside her. The fire had always been the reason for her suffering, the reason she lost her mother, her home, her name. Now these people wanted her to believe it was some divine inheritance? Cassian watched her, his expression unreadable. If what they say is true, then the king already knows. The priest interrupted, eyes flickering toward the throne. Her stomach turned to stone. He's here? The priest nodded once. He never left. From the shadowed dais came a faint sound, like a breath drawn too quietly to be noticed, yet it seemed to echo against every wall. Her head lifted, eyes narrowing at the throne's silhouette. The storm outside shifted, its thunder aligning with her racing pulse. And then, movement. A figure emerged from the darkness, tall and still as carved marble. His cloak shimmered faintly where moonlight caught it, and as he stepped forward, the air itself seemed to bend around him. The Alpha King. His presence filled the hall before his voice ever reached it. There was no crown. No need for one. Power rolled from him in invisible waves, a quiet dominance that made even the guards lower their heads. His eyes, an impossible shade of amber, too bright to be mortal, locked onto her, and in that instant, the world ceased to exist beyond the two of them. You carry the fire, he said simply, his voice a low resonance that vibrated through the floor. And the flame answers. Her throat tightened. You think this power belongs to you? He tilted his head, studying her. Belonging is a human word. The flame does not serve. It remembers. She wanted to look away, but couldn't. His gaze held her, unflinching, stripping her of all the walls she'd built. And in that look, something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, maybe. Or fate acknowledging its mark. He descended the steps slowly, each movement measured. Deliberate. When he stopped before her, the scent of him filled the air. Wild cedar, smoke, rain. It stirred something primal in her blood. Something that made her both ache and recoil. His eyes lingered on her glowing wrist. The prophecy said the marked one would awaken in chains, he murmured, almost to himself, and that her arrival would shake the balance of all packs. Her pulse thundered in her ears. You brought me here to test that? He smiled faintly, a curve of lips without warmth. To confirm it. Then what happens now? Now, he said, his gaze unyielding. We find out if you are the flame that saves us, or the fire that ends us. Her breath caught. Every instinct screamed to run, but her feet stayed rooted. Because deep down, beneath the fear and anger and confusion, something inside her answered him. Something ancient. Something certain. The silver light on her wrist flickered again, brighter this time, synchronizing with the golden glow of his eyes. For one impossible heartbeat, their auras merged, light bleeding into shadow, shadow into light. The hall trembled. Dust fell from the vaulted ceiling. And when it passed, she realized, whatever bound them wasn't coincidence. It was written long before either of them were born. Destiny had found her, and it would not let go. The storm outside hadn't truly passed. It had only shifted, gathering its strength around the citadel walls. Inside, the air trembled with the weight of judgment. The ceremonial hall blazed with hundreds of torches, their flames licking the marble pillars like restless tongues. The scent of burning oil mingled with fear, sweat, and something older. Something feral. She stood in the center, her wrists bound by iron cuffs that shimmered faintly with silver dust. Her head was bowed, damp hair clinging to her cheek, blood trickling from a fresh wound at her temple. The chains that held her didn't just restrain her, they humiliated her. Around her, voices rose in accusation, each word cutting deeper than the last. Witch. Curseborn. She carries the mark of Luna's wrath. Each shout echoed off the domed ceiling, a chorus of hatred that wrapped around her heart like cold vines. She tried to steady her breathing, but it came ragged and sharp. Every muscle in her body trembled, not from fear, but from restraint. The wolf inside her stirred, sensing the danger, clawing at the fragile human shell that barely held it back. At the far end of the hall sat the Alpha King, broad-shouldered, dark-eyed, silent. His throne wasn't adorned with jewels or gold. It was carved from black stone, veins of crimson light pulsing faintly through it, as though alive. His presence alone commanded obedience, yet now his gaze was unreadable. He looked at her like a storm watching the sea, curious, dangerous, restrained by choice. The rival alphas surrounded the dais, their cloaks heavy with insignias of old bloodlines. One stepped forward, Alpha Theros, his silver armor glinting under the torchlight. His voice boomed through the hall. She brings chaos wherever she walks. The shadow beasts rise again because she has awakened what should have stayed buried. We demand justice. We demand her death before her flame consumes us all. The hall roared in agreement, a mob cloaked in ceremony. But she could hear something beneath the noise, the heartbeat of fear, the tremor in their conviction. They didn't truly know what she was. They feared what they couldn't understand. She lifted her head. Her eyes met the Alpha King's, and for the first time since her capture, she saw it. Conflict. Not pity. Not curiosity. Something sharper, deeper. Recognition. He rose slowly from his throne. The room stilled. Even the torches seemed to lower their flame in deference to his movement. His voice, when it came, was quiet. Yet it silenced every other. "She saved my soldiers on the plains of Vortha," he said, his gaze still locked on her. "If she were the enemy, they'd be ash." A murmur rippled through the crowd, disbelief and anger colliding like storm waves. Theros stepped forward again, defiance twisting his lips. And yet her power mirrors the prophecy. The flame that consumes the sun. The beast that brings ruin to kings. At that, the king's expression hardened. His jaw tightened, the faintest hint of pain flickering across his features, gone as quickly as it came. The girl, no, the cursed shifter, felt her pulse quicken. The prophecy. Always the prophecy. It had haunted her since childhood. A story whispered in the dark about a girl who would bear Luna's flame and end an empire built on wolf blood. She'd never believed it could be her. Until now. The priest approached, his ceremonial staff clanging softly against the marble floor. His eyes glowed faintly blue, as though lit by the moon itself. "Show us," he commanded. "Show us the mark." She didn't move. The air thickened. Every instinct screamed no. But the guards behind her forced her forward, shoving her onto her knees. The fabric of her sleeve tore, revealing the faint silver pattern etched across her forearm. The shape pulsed gently, an intricate flame swirling around a crescent moon. Gasps filled the chamber. "Luna's fire," someone whispered. Then, the first tremor hit. It started as a low vibration beneath her palms. The floor shuddered, dust falling from the vaulted ceiling. A sound rose from deep within the earth, an unearthly howl, neither human nor wolf. Panic erupted. The guards drew weapons, but the air itself began to warp. Shadows crawled from the corners, thick and alive, merging into forms that should not exist. The shadow beasts. They spilled through the cracks in reality, eyes burning with red hunger, claws dragging across stone. Screams tore through the hall as soldiers fell one by one. The rival alphas scattered, their power faltering before the creature's rage. And at the heart of it all, she could feel it again, that flame, that pulse beneath her skin. It burned, demanding release. She'd spent her life fearing it, denying it, burying it. But now, surrounded by chaos and death, she had no choice. Her eyes snapped open, silver light bursting from within. The cuffs shattered. A surge of energy erupted, flinging her captors backward. The silver flames spiraled from her hands, pure and blinding, consuming every shadow it touched. The beasts shrieked, their forms unraveling into smoke. When it was over, silence returned. The hall lay in ruin, marble cracked, torches extinguished, the scent of burnt air lingering like a curse. She collapsed to her knees, trembling, her breath shallow. Her body ached as though torn apart from within. The mark on her arm still glowed faintly, a cruel reminder of what she had unleashed. The Alpha King descended from the dais. His steps echoed in the ruined chamber. When he reached her, he knelt, not out of submission, but acknowledgement. "You just saved us," he said softly, "and doomed yourself." She lifted her eyes to his, tears glinting in the dim light. "I didn't want this. Any of it." "I know." His voice dropped to a near whisper. "But power doesn't care what we want. Only what we are." He turned sharply to the guards who still lived. "Remove her from the hall. No one touches her without my command." They hesitated, glancing toward the council. The surviving alphas stood in silent outrage, their faces pale, their pride wounded. Theros stepped forward again, his voice raw with fury. "You defy the council? For her?" The king's gaze hardened like forged steel. "For her? I defy the world if I must." The weight of his words stunned the room into stillness. The council members exchanged looks, fear, disbelief, anger, and beneath it all, something more dangerous: intent. He turned away before they could respond, motioning for his guards to follow. The shifter girl was lifted to her feet, her body weak, but her spirit burning. As they led her down the long corridor, she looked back once. The king stood in the ruins of his throne room, a figure carved in shadow and moonlight. Their eyes met for a heartbeat, long enough to feel the invisible tether between them tighten. Outside, the night had deepened. The rain had stopped, but the sky churned with thunder that never broke. The city slept uneasily, unaware that its fate had just shifted. In the corridors of power, whispers began to spread, of a cursed girl who wielded Luna's flame, of a king who chose her over his throne, and of a prophecy that stirred once more in the blood of wolves. But for her, there was only silence now. Silence and the memory of his voice. As the doors closed behind her, she felt the hollow ache of something she couldn't name. Not quite hope, not quite fear, something more dangerous. The bond had begun, and though neither of them spoke it aloud, both knew the truth. The world had just declared war on their souls. The desert night was a restless silence, vast and watching. Every grain of sand shimmered faintly beneath the twin moons, and the wind carried with it the kind of chill that cut straight through the soul. The ruins of the city were long behind her now, reduced to memory and ash. She sat by the faint crackle of a dying fire, her back to the cold, her eyes fixed on the flame that refused to die. Each flicker of that light reminded her of what still burned beneath her skin, the silver fire that refused to stay buried. Her palms still trembled from the memory of what she'd done. The screams, the blinding light, the faces of those who'd once called her an abomination, now silenced by the power she never wanted. She pressed her hand against her arm where the mark still faintly glowed beneath the dirt and blood. It pulsed like a heartbeat, steady, haunting, alive. She hated it, and yet a part of her couldn't help but feel it calling. The prophecy she'd spent her life running from was no longer words on parchment. It was her blood, her curse, her destiny. The fire cracked softly, snapping her from thought. Her body ached. Exhaustion hung heavy over her bones. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, a low, mournful sound that seemed to stretch across the horizon. For a moment, she wondered if it was him, the Alpha King, the man who had defied his counsel for her, who had looked at her not with fear, but recognition. She could still feel the echo of that look deep inside, like a wound that refused to heal. She pulled the torn cloak tighter around her shoulders, fighting the chill, when she heard it, the crunch of footsteps over sand. Her body went still, every muscle tensed. The firelight caught a glint of steel before a voice broke through the dark. "You shouldn't be out here alone." She froze. That voice, smooth, low, with an edge of authority that made her heart race before her mind could reason. A figure stepped into the dim circle of firelight. Tall, broad-shouldered, his cloak trailing dust behind him. The hood fell back to reveal the envoy, the same man who had pulled her from the guards, who had spoken the king's command as though it were law. But now, without the armor, without the mask of duty, his face carried something else. Weariness. A quiet ache. The kind that comes from carrying ghosts for too long. "I didn't expect anyone to find me," she said softly, her voice rough. He crouched near the fire, setting down a leather satchel. "You didn't make it easy." He looked at her, his eyes reflecting the flickering light. Deep amber, like molten gold. But the world has a way of dragging trouble back to those who try to outrun it. She watched him in silence as he reached into the satchel and pulled out a small flask, then a strip of linen. The faint scent of herbs filled the air. "Let me see your arm," he said quietly. She hesitated, clutching her cloak closer. "It's fine." "It's bleeding through the wrap," he replied, his tone steady but gentle. "If you don't clean it, it'll infect by dawn." For a long moment she didn't move. Then, with a sigh, she extended her arm. The linen sleeve fell away, revealing the angry red wound. He worked without a word, dabbing it carefully with a salve that stung at first, then soothed like cool rain. She tried not to flinch, but his touch, light, deliberate, made her skin burn for a different reason. His fingers brushed her wrist, and the mark beneath her skin shimmered faintly in response. He froze. Their eyes met, the air between them tightening like a string drawn too far. "You've felt it too, haven't you?" she whispered. He looked away, his jaw tightening. "That mark isn't just prophecy. It's bond." "Bond?" He nodded once. A tie between souls chosen by the moon's flame. It was meant for the king. His gaze lifted to hers again, sharp with something close to guilt. But when I touched you that day, something changed. Her heart stuttered. You mean, I shouldn't be here, he interrupted, voice low. I shouldn't even look at you. But ever since that night, I've felt it pulling. Every step I take away from you burns. The confession hung in the cold air, heavy with something they couldn't name. She wanted to be angry, to tell him that she hadn't asked for this, that she didn't want anyone's bond, anyone's destiny. But his eyes held that same hollow pain she saw in her own reflection. The pain of someone who had lost more than words could say. Tell me, she said finally. What happened to you? He looked into the fire, and for a while, only the crackle of the embers answered. Then he spoke, his voice softer than the wind. I once believed in the prophecy, he said. Believed it could save us. I led men to fight for it. But the one I loved, my mate, was taken because of it. The council said her blood was the price to keep balance. He swallowed hard, the faintest tremor in his voice. I thought I could change fate. Instead, I gave it power. Her chest ached. I'm sorry. He smiled faintly, a sad curve of lips. Don't be. You didn't write the stars. You're just caught in their orbit. She stared at him across the fire, studying the lines of his face, the quiet sorrow in his eyes, the strength buried beneath the exhaustion. He was a man divided, just like her, bound by duty, haunted by destiny. For the first time since her exile, she felt the edge of her defenses soften. She didn't know why, but something in him felt familiar, like an echo she'd forgotten she once heard. He reached across the fire, his hand hesitating halfway. You can't face this alone, he said. Not with the world hunting you. Her throat tightened. And what makes you think you can stop it? I can't, he said simply. But I can stand between you and the fire. The honesty in his words undid her. Slowly, cautiously, she reached out. Their hands met above the dying flame, his rough, hers trembling. The contact sent a pulse through both of them, a jolt that wasn't just magic, but something far older. A memory of connection, of belonging. The world seemed to fall away for a heartbeat. The desert, the prophecy, the chaos, all dissolved. There was only that touch, that unspoken promise hovering between their skin. He leaned closer, his voice barely a breath. If I'm wrong about this, tell me to stop. Her breath hitched, eyes flicking from his lips to his eyes. I can't, she whispered. The distance between them vanished until the sound came. A low, distant horn, echoing across the desert night. Then another, then a third. His body went rigid, instinct snapping back into place. He turned toward the horizon, his ears picking up what hers soon did. The rumble of hooves, the faint shimmer of torchlight in the distance. They've found you, he muttered. Panic surged in her chest. The council's hunters? He nodded grimly. They'll track the mark. They won't stop until you're gone. She rose, heart pounding. Then go. If they catch you with me... He grabbed her wrist, the touch fierce. No, you don't understand. They'll use you. Twist what you are into something you'll hate. I've seen what they do to people like us. She stared at him, torn between the instinct to run and the desperate need to trust. Why are you doing this? She asked. He looked at her as if the question itself hurt. Because I already lost one soul to the prophecy. I won't lose another. The wind whipped around them, scattering sand into the fire, dimming it further. The night pressed close, listening. Trust me, he said, his voice a low vow. or the world will decide for you." For a long moment, she didn't move. Her heart raced, torn between fear and something dangerously close to faith. Then, slowly, she nodded. He squeezed her hand once, a silent promise, before turning toward the dunes. The torches in the distance grew brighter. There wasn't much time. "Then lead the way," she said quietly. He looked back at her, the faintest flicker of relief crossing his face. Then they ran, two souls bound by flame and fate, vanishing into the endless desert night, where trust would soon become the only thing keeping them alive. And as the wind swallowed their footprints, the world began to shift again, its old prophecies stirring awake, whispering in the dark that destiny had just chosen its next move. Dawn came blood-red. The kind of dawn that looked less like morning and more like a wound torn open across the horizon. The ruins that once held songs and laughter were now only bones, broken marble, shattered pillars, the ghosts of a city that forgot mercy. Smoke curled from the remnants of the night before, rising like dying prayers into a sky that refused to forgive. She stood at the edge of it all, barefoot, motionless. Her cloak, shredded by battle and wind, clung to her shoulders like a second skin. The silver flame under her veins pulsed slow and heavy, steadying her breath, sharpening her senses. The air around her was thick with the scent of dust and blood. In the distance, the ground trembled, the rhythmic pulse of marching feet. Thousands of them, men and beasts, bound by dark sigils carved into their flesh. The enemy legions had come, just as the prophecy said they would. But this time she didn't run. She waited. The first rays of light touched her skin, and it began, soft at first, then brilliant. Her mark ignited, silver bright beneath the grime and bruises. The same mark that once condemned her now shimmered like a crown. Her heartbeat matched the tremor in the ground. Every pulse was power, and every breath was a vow. They had called her cursed. They had tried to bury her. But the fire in her blood was not made for graves. From behind her, the sound of armor clinking drew near. She turned slightly, and there he was, the Alpha King. His once polished armor was streaked with ash, his crown bent from battle. He looked older now, as if the weight of his choices had carved themselves into the lines of his face. Yet in his eyes, there was no surrender, only awe. He stepped closer, the wind catching the edges of his cloak. Then, slowly, he knelt. The sight of a king on his knees would have silenced entire nations. Here, it was a plea wrapped in reverence. "This crown," he said quietly, his voice rough, "was never meant for me. The people need more than a ruler. They need a flame. Take it. Lead them." For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Her gaze drifted to the crown, glinting faintly in the dirt. Its jewels were smeared with blood. His, theirs, everyone's. Her hand trembled, not from weakness, but from memory. She thought of the chains, the jeers, the night she had been hunted like an animal through those same streets now burning below. "No," she whispered. Her voice was steady, but her chest ached with the force of it. "I was never meant to rule. I was meant to rise." The king looked up at her, confusion flickering behind his exhaustion. She took a step back, lifting her face to the wind. The mark on her skin flared brighter, spilling light across the ruins. "They will not follow me because I wear your crown," she said softly. "They will follow because I will not bow to their fear anymore." Then the ground split. It began as a low rumble beneath her feet, then a roar that tore through the silence like thunder made flesh. The soldiers hesitated. The beasts shrank back. The earth trembled as cracks of silver light spread across the battlefield like veins awakening after centuries of sleep. Her eyes, once dark with sorrow, blazed pure silver. She raised her hands, scarred, trembling, alive, and the storm answered. Wind rushed across the plains, spiraling into a maelstrom around her. The dust lifted, blurring the horizon, and within that chaos, the wolves began to howl. One by one, those who had forgotten their true form felt the pull of the moon again. Bodies shifted, bones cracked, fur split through skin. Warriors became wolves once more, their howls echoing through the storm like an ancient chorus reborn. Her power spread like wildfire, not to destroy, but to awaken. Even the condemned felt it. Those who had spat on her name now felt the heat of her flame melt the darkness binding them. Their blackened sigils burned away, replaced by the silver glow of renewal. She didn't spare only her allies. She saved her enemies too. Because that was her defiance. That was her justice. The enemy legions faltered, their unity cracking under the weight of something greater than command, faith. A few dropped their weapons. Some fell to their knees. Others ran, howling in terror as the storm ripped through their ranks. But she saw him, the one who hadn't moved. High atop the broken altar stood the high priest, the man who had carved fear into her life and called it prophecy. His robes, once white, were now black as soot. His eyes burned red beneath the hood. Around him, the air shimmered with a magic so old it smelled like rot. He raised his staff, and the wind screamed. "Child of Luna," he hissed, "you were never chosen. You were created, a weapon, and every weapon must serve." Her pulse steadied. "You twisted the truth." "I made the truth," he spat. "You think your flame is divine? It's my curse perfected." "You are not salvation. You are balance undone." The sky darkened. Clouds churned, thick and heavy, crackling with lightning. The wolves backed away as the priest lifted his staff higher, dark tendrils spilling from his fingers. He thrust the staff toward her. The blast struck like a spear of shadow, slamming her back. Her knees hit the ground, her breath caught in her throat. For a moment, the flame inside her flickered, dimmed. The priest laughed, a sound that curdled the air. "See? Even the gods fear their own mistakes." Pain radiated through her body. Every nerve burned. Every heartbeat felt like it would shatter her ribs. She pressed a hand to the earth, gasping, tasting blood. The wolves cried out, but none dared move closer. His power was poison, old and thick. And then she heard it. The voice. Soft, ancient, echoing from deep within her chest. "You are not the mistake. You are the correction." She lifted her head. The world tilted, but her gaze never wavered. The wind gathered around her again, slower this time, more deliberate. The mark on her arm began to glow, not with fire, but with calm. "I am not your weapon," she said, her voice low, "and I am not your sacrifice." The high priest snarled, hurling another wave of dark energy. This time, she didn't flinch. The blast struck her, but instead of breaking, the flame absorbed it. Her hair lifted in the wind, silver light spilling from her eyes. "You bound the truth in chains," she whispered. "You called power a curse. You called mercy weakness. You were wrong." The priest stepped back, his confidence faltering. She rose slowly, the silver flame roaring to life around her. It wasn't just light, it was song and storm, fury and forgiveness intertwined. Her every breath rippled with energy that made the air hum. The wolves bowed their heads. The king shielded his eyes. The high priest screamed as she advanced, his magic unraveling at the edges. "You cannot destroy me. I am eternal." "No," she said. "You're what happens when fear pretends to be faith." She raised her hand. The flame surged upward, twisting into a vortex that reached the heavens. The clouds split open, and for one moment, the entire sky burned silver. When the light fell back to earth, the priest was gone. Only ashes remained, soft, silent, carried away by the wind. The battlefield was still. Every warrior, every wolf, every creature that had once fought now knelt, not in obedience, but in awe. The storm began to fade, leaving only the faint shimmer of light over the ruins. The mark on her arm dimmed to a gentle glow. She turned to the king. His eyes were wide, not with fear, but with something deeper. Respect. Wonder. "You saved them," he said softly. She shook her head. "No, they saved themselves. I just reminded them what they were made of." The silence that followed was sacred. Even the wind seemed to move slower, careful not to disturb the stillness she'd carved from chaos. Then she looked to the horizon. The fire had died down, but far away, she could still hear echoes, the remnants of battles yet to come. The prophecy had ended, but the world had not. The king took a hesitant step forward. "What will you do now?" She looked back at him, eyes clear, voice steady. "Live." A faint smile tugged at his lips. "The world won't understand what you've become." "They don't have to," she said. "They just have to see that it's possible." The wolves began to rise one by one, their howls breaking the silence again. Not in mourning, but in renewal. The sound spread across the land like a promise that something sacred had returned. She turned away from the ruins, the sun now fully risen behind her. Its warmth touched her skin, soft and golden, almost gentle after all the fire. Each step she took left no trace on the earth, as if the land itself bowed in quiet gratitude. She didn't look back. Not once. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't running from the prophecy. She was walking beyond it. And somewhere in the faint hum of the morning wind, the old gods whispered a single truth she had earned with blood and flame. She was never meant to be the sacrifice. She was the answer. The throne room is a cathedral of ruin. Pillars, once proud and veined with gold, now lean like broken sentinels. Smoke clings to the air, thick, metallic, ghosting through cracks where moonlight spills in pale and cold. The war is over, but silence. Silence is heavier than any scream. Her breath trembles. The scent of ash, blood, and fading magic wraps around her like a shroud. Her silver-lit eyes, once blazing with divine fury, now flicker like dying embers. The crown lies between them on the cracked marble floor, its gemstones dull, its gold marred by soot. The Alpha King kneels, one hand pressed to his chest, the other reaching toward her. He says nothing. Words have lost meaning here. The air between them hums, familiar, dangerous, unspoken. His eyes search her face, tracing the faint lines of exhaustion, the streaks of dirt against her skin, the tears that glint like liquid moonlight. She looks away, the muscles in her jaw tightening as she fights to steady her breathing. All around them, survivors whisper. Some call her a savior, others, a curse given flesh. Her name becomes myth before it even leaves their lips. She feels every glance, every ounce of reverence and fear. The fire that once burned to prove herself now feels like a chain around her ribs. She wants to scream, to remind them she never asked for this, never wanted their worship, never wanted to be the prophecy that burned kingdoms to the ground. The king steps closer. The echo of his boots against the marble is slow, deliberate, each step a question she can't yet answer. He reaches again, his hand trembling not from weakness, but from something rawer, older. "Don't," she whispers, voice barely audible through the smoke. He pauses, inches away. "You saved them," he says softly. You saved us all. Her eyes flash, cold and bright. No. I destroyed everything that made us who we were. The king's gaze hardens, but there's a fracture of sorrow behind it. You did what had to be done. She shakes her head, the motions small but final. You don't understand. The fire wasn't mercy. It was judgment, and it came from me. Her voice wavers, half rage, half grief. Every word is a confession carved in pain. The prophecy didn't just mark her, it rewrote her soul, turned compassion into power, and power into isolation. He wants to reach her, to say that she is more than fate's weapon, but the distance between them feels endless. He sees her shoulders trembling, her lips quivering as if caught between apology and defiance. Then the tremor beneath their feet, distant, low, reminds them that the world still stands in balance. The storm she unleashed has quieted, but its echo stirs in the horizon. She turns her face toward the window, where the dawn bleeds red over shattered towers. Her heart aches for what was lost, for the pack that cast her out, for the mother who believed she'd one day return whole, for the life that might have been hers if destiny hadn't found her. He whispers, "You're not alone." She laughs bitterly, a sound too hollow to carry warmth. "Aren't I?" He steps closer still, his hand finding her wrist. The touch sparks, warm, steady, real. She doesn't pull away this time, though her eyes close in pain. "You can't keep running from what you are," he murmurs. "The world will always fear power it can't control, but it will follow strength it can believe in." Her breath catches. "And if I can't believe in myself, then I'll believe for you." The words break her guard like the first crack of thunder before a storm. For a fleeting moment, her walls crumble. She lets the silence between them fill with everything unspoken. The longing, the regret, the pull neither can deny. Her fingers twitch, wanting to hold on, but she doesn't. She steps back, severing the contact as though the air itself burns. "You can't save me," she says quietly. "Not from what's coming." His brow furrows. "What do you mean?" She looks past him, eyes distant. "The fire doesn't end with me." The prophecy was never about one girl. It's about what rises after everything falls. He follows her gaze to the horizon, the crimson clouds twisting, the faint shimmer of light gathering far beyond the city walls. Something ancient, restless, stirs beneath the earth. Fear flickers across his features, but she only stands taller. Her expression hardens into resolve. The same fire that once consumed her now burns with clarity. "I will not be their sacrifice," she says, voice steady as stone. "Not for their peace. Not for their redemption." Her hand lifts, fingers curling slightly. The air bends, shimmering around her like a living flame. The survivors step back, watching in awe as her glow returns. Not blinding, not violent, but alive. Controlled. Claimed. The king lowers his head, both in reverence and understanding. He knows now. She is not his to command, not the council's, not even the moon's. She is her own fate. When her gaze returns to him, something soft lingers there, an ache for what could have been, a quiet love buried beneath duty and war. "If I walk this path," she says, "I walk it alone." His voice breaks on the answer. "Then may the moon guide you, even when I cannot." Her lips tremble, a half smile ghosting over them. "You already have." And with that, she turns toward the shattered archway. The wind rushes in, carrying embers that swirl around her like tiny stars. Each step she takes echoes through the chamber, a heartbeat fading into legend. The soldiers part, heads bowed, unsure whether they're watching a savior depart, or a storm that might one day return. Outside, The city lies silent. Wolves kneel in the distance, sensing the balance restored, yet fragile. She pauses on the steps, lifting her face to the morning light. The fire within her hums, not as a curse, but as a song. A reminder of everything she's endured, everything she's lost, and everything she still must become. Behind her, the king watches until the light swallows her silhouette. His chest tightens with the weight of choices undone. He whispers to the empty air, "She was never meant to be tamed." A single silver feather drifts from the sky, landing on the broken crown between them, and in the silence that follows, the world seems to hold its breath. Then, a voice, soft yet unyielding, cuts through the stillness, carried not by sound, but by memory, by soul. Would you have feared her, or followed her into fire? The words hang in the air, a question that pierces deeper than any blade. And as the screen fades to black, the final whisper returns, gentle, haunting, impossible to forget. If her story stirs something within you, subscribe to Sophie's romance collections, where every heartbeat hides a legend. The ruins have grown quiet, too quiet. The dawn that once felt like rebirth now hangs heavy with the scent of unease. Smoke curls upward from the scorched battlements, and the faint glimmer of sunlight struggles to pierce the ashen haze that clings to the capital like a ghost refusing to leave. The Alpha King stands before the broken gates, the crown still at his feet, its edges melted by the fire she summoned. His chest rises and falls in slow, uncertain rhythm. The war is done, or so it seems. Yet beneath his boots, the earth hums with something restless. The kind of hum that doesn't belong to peace. He glances to the horizon, where she vanished hours ago, walking barefoot into the desert's edge, her silver flame flickering behind her like a fading promise. He tells himself she's gone to heal, that she's free. But deep inside, his instincts, the wolf buried beneath duty and scars, snarl with warning. The bond between them, fragile yet unbroken, still tugs faintly at his soul. And then, the ground moves. A subtle tremor at first, like the heartbeat of something sleeping deep within the earth. Then sharper, stones cracking, chains rattling far below the citadel's foundations. The soldiers look up, frozen. The air thickens, carrying a low vibration that creeps into their bones. Dust drifts down from the vaulted ceiling, spiraling like dying snowflakes. The king's pulse quickens, and his gaze sharpens toward the dungeons below. That's when the whisper comes. Faint. Human, yet drenched in power. She is not the only one. The voice slithers through the shadows, hollow yet heavy with meaning. The king freezes, his claws unsheathing slightly, a reflex born of fear he thought long buried. The soldiers back away from the crumbling stairwell as the whisper repeats, louder this time, dragging like chains through water. She is not the only one. The sound roots everyone in place. The king moves forward alone, descending into the dark. The air grows colder, the torches flickering against the walls carved with ancient sigils. Symbols that hadn't glowed for centuries now hum faintly with red light. He steps through the final archway, and there, shrouded in shadow, kneels a figure bound by silver chains that pulse like veins of lightning. A warrior. Muscles lean but trembling, skin marked with the scars of battle and runes carved by magic itself. His eyes are closed, his hair matted, his breath ragged. Yet even in chains, his presence is colossal. The king stills. His wolf bristles beneath his skin, sensing the energy radiating from this imprisoned being. Not human, not entirely wolf either. Something older, something wilder. The prisoner lifts his head slowly. Eyes like molten bronze slice through the darkness, catching the faint light. She bears the mark of Luna, the chained warrior murmurs, voice rough from disuse. But she is not the first, nor will she be the last. The king's voice, when it comes, is a whisper of authority and disbelief. Who are you? The warrior smiles faintly, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. A memory your bloodline tried to erase. The king steps closer, tension tightening his every muscle. You speak as though you know her. I knew what she would become before she drew her first breath. The warrior shifts, the silver chains tightening around him with a hiss. The fire she wields is not prophecy, it's inheritance. The words sink deep, cutting through the king's resolve. Inheritance? She carries the flame because she was meant to finish what I began. The king's heartbeat drums against his ribs. You mean the war? The prophecy? The warrior's gaze hardens. No. The awakening. The silence that follows feels alive, stretching between them like a blade. The king wants to deny it, to claim that the prophecy ended when she burned the priest, when she shattered the curse that bound their world in fear. But his wolf knows better. The tremor in the ground, the flicker of energy in the air. It's not aftermath, it's resurgence. What are you? He demands. The warrior's smirk deepens. I am what your kind forgot how to fear. The king's hand drifts toward the dagger at his belt. If you've harmed her... The warrior laughs, low and gravel thick. Harm her? No, she is the key, the lock, and the fire that unbinds us all. His gaze sharpens. She will come back, king, not to rule, but to finish the burning. The king's chest tightens. She won't destroy what she's saved. You still think she has a choice? The warrior leans forward, the faint clink of his chains echoing like a countdown. Tell me, when she looks into your eyes and sees what the moon has hidden, will you still reach for her hand? Or will you run from the storm she brings? The king turns away, anger masking his dread. You speak in riddles. Then listen closely, the warrior whispers. The moon is shifting, the balance you cherish, already breaking. And then deep beneath them, a sound rises, a howl, not hers. Deeper, older. It rolls through the stones, through marrow, through memory. Every soldier above feels it in their bones. The air shivers. The torches extinguish. The king's breath hitches. The warrior closes his eyes, head bowing as if in reverence. Do you hear it? He murmurs. The first wolf remembers. Above ground, the city trembles once more. Birds scatter from the towers. The wolves outside the gates lift their muzzles to the wind. Their howls answering an ancient call that predates kings and crowns. And somewhere beyond the desert, where the heat bends the horizon and silence hums with restless energy, she stops walking. Her eyes narrow. The flame in her veins stirs again, no longer silver, but edged in something darker. A low growl vibrates in her chest before she even realizes it. She looks toward the mountains, the faint echo of that primal howl reaching her ears. It's not just sound. It's memory. It's blood. Her fingers twitch, the air crackling faintly around her. She whispers to no one. It can't be. But the pull is undeniable. Whatever lies beneath the ruins calls to her now. Ancient, familiar, hungry. Back in the citadel, the king faces the chained warrior once more. If what you say is true, then tell me what's coming. The warrior's eyes gleam like molten coins in the dark. Not what's coming, king. Who? And then his voice lowers, softer, almost reverent. The first alpha stirs. The king's pulse roars in his ears. The words hang between them, heavy with dread. The first alpha, the origin of their kind, the one lost to myth, buried beneath time and betrayal. The being said to have been both creator and destroyer. But he was supposed to be dead. The warrior's smirk fades. When she burned the priest, she broke the seal that held him. The fire you worship has woken the god you fear. The king's breath shudders out. You're lying. The warrior only closes his eyes. Pray that I am. Above, thunder cracks, sudden, violent. The windows burst inward as a shockwave tears through the sky. Far beyond the walls, in the depths of the forest that rings the capital, a figure stirs among the shadows. Massive, primal, eyes glowing red where no light reaches. The ancient howl rises again, shaking the trees, rippling across the land. And miles away, she drops to her knees. The sand beneath her glows faintly. Her heart slams against her ribs, pain slicing through her chest as the old magic answers. A whisper drifts through her mind, one she's never heard before, yet knows by instinct. My fire, you carry what was mine. Her breath falters, the horizon ripples, the world, for a fleeting second, seems to inhale. Then, silence. The heartbeat of the world itself stops. A single moment, one exhale, one truth. This isn't over. The story is far from done. As the smoke settles once more over the capital, and the whispers of survivors fade into the wind, that ancient howl echoes again, this time softer, almost mournful. And beneath it all, the narrator's voice drifts through the stillness, quiet yet magnetic, every word curling like smoke into the listener's soul. You've walked through fire with her, felt her rise, her rage, her rebirth. But the flame she carries isn't finished burning. Don't miss what comes next. Subscribe, share, and stay with Sophie's Romance Collections, where love is destiny, and destiny always bites back.